Of Mice and Men is a novel written by John Steinbeck in 1937. This was controversial at the time for its use of abuse and expressive depictions of the human suffering surrounding prejudice, mental disabilities, domestic violence, and poverty. This book was published in a lot of different versions. That helped to earn the book a ban from public schools and libraries, reasonable due to the emotional state of much of American society at the time.
Based on Steinbeck's personal experiences relating to life on the ranches as a teenager in 1910. However, Of Mice and Men is a story of George Milton and Lenny Small, who displaced migrant ranch workers who moved from place to place in California in search of new job opportunities.
The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in world history. Steinbeck drew on his own experience as well as the major historical events happening at this time to write his novel about poor farm workers during a time of economic hardship.
George Milton is a quick-witted man who is Lenny's guardian and best friend. John Steinbeck describes George as small and quick.
And Lenny Small, a mentally disabled, gigantic, and physically strong man who traveled with George and is his constant companion. He dreamed of living a fat at the land and being able to tend the rabbits.
I spend all my time telling you things and you forget them.
I remember about the rabbit.
At the beginning of the book, George and Lenny arrive at a small pond. They've been traveling all day on their way to a farm where they're going to work.
George complains that his life would be so easy if he didn't have to take care of Lenny. He wouldn't have to worry about Lenny getting into trouble like he did at the last farm. Lenny saw a girl in a red dress, and he liked the look of her dress so much that he wanted to touch it. When Lenny touched the dress, the girl screamed. Lenny panicked and grabbed hold of the dress. The girl claimed she was raped, and a mob formed to lynch Lenny.
The next morning, George and Lenny arrive at the farm they're supposed to work at, and they meet the boss. The boss leaves, and an old man named Candy shows up with his old sheepdog.
They meet Candy, an old swamper or handyman with a missing hand and an ancient dog.
While he's talking to George and Lenny, Curly comes in looking for the boss, who's his father.
Curly is the boss's main son. He's newly married and possessive of his flirtatious wife.
He notices George and Lenny, and he asks them a bunch of questions and generally acts like a jerk. Candy goes out, and a little while later, Curly's wife shows up in the doorway.
Curly's wife is the flirtatious woman that always flirts with other men other than Candy himself.
She tries to make conversation, but George makes it clear he doesn't want to talk to her. Lenny just stares at her.
Don't you even look at her. Keep away from her.
The next chapter starts an unspecified amount of time later. After working all day, George comes into the bunkhouse with Slim, a jerkline skinner, or the lead driver of a mule team, and one of the most respected guys on the ranch.
Slim is a skilled mule driver who wields great authority on the ranch.
George thanks Slim for giving Lenny one of the puppies from his dog's new litter. George explains that he and Lenny were both born in Auburn, and that he knew Lenny's Aunt Clara. When she died, Lenny went out working with George, and they just got used to each other. George used to play lots of jokes on Lenny, until one day he got Lenny to jump into a river. Lenny couldn't swim and almost drowned, but he was so nice to George when George helped pull him out of the river, that George never did anything mean to him again. Candy comes back into the bunkhouse with his old dog, and another worker, Carlson, follows them in shortly after. Carlson starts talking about how bad Candy's dog smells, and how it's old and suffering.
I don't mind that dog here, stinks, Candy. He's got no teeth. He's all stiff from rheumatism. Ain't no good to you. Hell, he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you just shoot him, Candy?
Candy protests, but the general opinion in the bunkhouse seems to be that they should put the dog down. Candy gives in, and Carlson leads the dog out.
Candy, if you want me to, I'll put that old dog out of his misery right now. Won't hurt him at all. Let's wait till tomorrow. I don't see no reason for it. Let's get it over with. We can't sleep that stinking dog in here.
A young laborer named Whit comes in, and there's some strained silence and awkward conversation while everyone tries not to talk about Candy's dog. Candy just lies in bed rigidly, staring at the ceiling, and finally they hear the shot fired outside.
Carlson comes back in, and Lenny comes in too. Carlson sits in his bunk and doesn't say anything about Candy's dog, just starts cleaning his gun. Curly walks in and asks if anyone has seen his wife. He realizes Slim's not in the bunkhouse. When George says Slim went to the barn, Curly leaves in a hurry. Whit and Carlson go out behind him, expecting a fight if Curly catches his wife with Slim.
Lenny asks George how long it's going to be until they have their own farm and raise rabbits. George says he doesn't know, that they have to save a lot of money first. Lenny asks George to tell him again what the place will be like, and George starts describing it.
You're gonna live off the fatted land and have rabbits.
Then you can feed them alfalfa.
You damn right.
Candy asks if George really knows of such a place and how much it would cost. George is defensive and wants to know why Candy is asking. Candy explains that he's not of much use to anyone since he has only one hand. It's only a matter of time before they get rid of him. He has money saved up, and George can put it to the farm if he can get in on the place with George and Lenny. With Candy's money, they could actually buy the place, so they plan to save money for another month, then to collect their pay and leave.
Look, if me and Lenny work a month and we don't spend nothing, we'll have $100. And you got $350?
Yeah, and you can have every cent of it.
That'd be $450. Jesus Christ, I bet we could get it for that. And then you and Lenny could go get her started, and I'd get a job and make up the rest.
I'm gonna take that goddamn pup.
Sure. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write those two old people that will take it. And Candy will send $100 to hold it.
I sure will. And I'll have $30 more time you guys is ready to quit.
And I get to tame the rabbits till
Yeah. And I'll get the hoe in the garden even if I ain't no good at it.
Sure.
They got a nice stove there?
Yeah, they got
a nice
stove. They got a real nice stove.
But I bet that puppy like it there with Christ.
We're gonna do it, goddammit. We're gonna fix up that little old place and we'll go live there.
Dude, when we gonna do it?
1 month. Rat smack in 1 month. Now, don't tell nobody about it.
Don't
just us three.
Don't tell nobody.
Steinbeck spent time in the migrant camps and was deeply touched by their perseverance, hope, and sadness in their quest for the American dream.
Slim, Curly, Carlson, and Whit all come in together. Curly keeps apologizing to Slim, apparently for suspecting Slim of being with his wife. Curly sees Lenny smiling, and gets angry because no big son of a bitch laughs at him. Lenny stands and backs away from Curly, but Curly starts hitting him. Curly busts Lenny's nose and cuts his face up.
Get him, Lenny!
Lenny catches one of Curly's fists and crushes it in his hand. Curly starts writhing in pain. Finally, Lenny releases Curly, whose hand is completely broken. Lenny keeps saying he didn't want to do it. George asks Slim if they're going to get fired, but Slim tells Curly to say he got his hand caught in a machine, or he'll tell everyone what Lenny did, and everyone will laugh at Curly. The next night, while most of the guys head into town to go to a brothel, Lenny wanders over to the room of the stable buck, Crooks. None of the other ranch workers ever go into Crooks' room because he's black.
The character of Crooks, the black ranch hand, Steinbeck illustrates the constant polluting presence of racism in America in the 1930s.
Candy comes looking for Lenny, and the three of them end up sitting and talking together. Curly's wife comes to the doorway looking for Curly. Candy tells her to leave because they don't want trouble. Curly's wife gets angry and says she likes to talk to people too. Crooks tells her to get out of his room, but she tells him to shut up. She says she could get him strung up a tree so fast it's not even funny. It's a Sunday afternoon, and Lenny is in the barn by himself. He looks at the puppy he accidentally killed and talks to it, asking it why it had to die. Curly's wife finds Lenny there hiding something. When she notices the puppy, Lenny explains he was playing with it, but when it went to bite him, he smacked it, and the puppy died. She tries to console Lenny, but he still doesn't want to talk to her because George will get mad at him, and then George won't let him tend the rabbits.
Before the action of the story begins, circumstances have robbed most of the characters of these wishes. Curly's wife, for instance, has resigned herself to an unfulfilling marriage.
I tell you, I ain't used to living like this. I could have made something out of myself. Maybe I will yet. Show come through Salinas, and I met one of the actors. He says I could go with the show. My old lady wouldn't let me, but this guy says I coulda. I went. I wouldn't be living like this, you bet. Another time I met a guy. He was in the pictures. Went up to the Riverside Dance Palace with him. He says he was going to put me in the movies. He says I was a natural. As soon as he got back to Hollywood, he was going to write to me about it. I never did get that letter. You're nuts. I always thought my old lady stole it, too. She said no. So, I married Curly. Met him out at the Riverside Dance Palace that same night. I don't like Curly. He ain't a nice fella. I could have been in the movies. I had nice clothes. This guy said I was an actor.
He likes rabbits because he likes to touch soft things. Curly's wife says she understands, that sometimes she'll just sit and stroke her hair because it's so soft, and she invites Lenny to touch her hair. Lenny strokes her hair, but he does it too hard, and she gets mad at him. She becomes angry and jerks her head away, but Lenny panics and grabs hold of her hair. He covers her mouth to keep her from screaming, and she starts to struggle violently. He shakes her, accidentally breaking her neck.
Okay.
She lies still, and eventually Lenny realizes what he's done. He remembers what George told him, that if anything goes wrong, he should go hide in the brush by the pond. Candy is the first to find Curly's wife. He calls in George, and they both know that Lenny did it, and that Curly's going to want to have Lenny lynched. Candy wonders if they can still get the farm together, and George replies that he guesses he knew it would never happen. All the guys go into the barn, and they know right away who killed Curly's wife. Curly wants to find Lenny and kill him. Carlson says his gun is missing, and they think Lenny must have taken it. George knows there's nothing he can do. He has to go with them so they don't think he had a part in the murder. Lenny goes back to the pond where George told him to hide. He says to himself that George is going to yell at him. Then he hallucinates. He sees his Aunt Clara. She says if it weren't for Lenny, George could do anything he wants, like spend his pay in a whorehouse. Then Lenny sees a giant rabbit. The rabbit tells him that George won't ever let him take care of the rabbits. It says George is going to beat him with a stick, and tells him over and over that George is going to leave him. George arrives at the pond.
I'm sorry, George. I didn't mean to kill the girl, and now the whole town's gonna hang me by a rope.
Oh, I would never let that happen.
Thanks. Tell me about the rabbits, George.
I get the tender rabbit.
All the other guys show up and see that George shot Lenny. Slim tells George that he had to do it. He helps him up and takes him to get a drink. Carlson and Curly wonder why George and Slim are so upset.
Loneliness motivates characters to seek an alternate way of life. The characters that start off together end up being separated up in the end, like George and Lenny, Kenny and his dog, and Curly and his wife.
Nobody in the world gives a hoot and hell about it.
But not us, George. Tell about us now. Because
I got you.
And I got... What the hell are you getting into this for?
We travel together.
In a world where every man was alone.
In conclusion, Steinbeck has presented the theme of loneliness successfully in various ways.
Lenny, I told you not to bring that pup in here.
I ain't got no pup.
They had laughter.
Of Mice and Men is about loneliness. Almost every character wants to make a connection with someone, but either fails to do so or loses the connection they have. They're also unusual because they're so different from each other. George is small and shrewd, while Lenny is large and has a mental disability. George takes care of Lenny, and they have this dream of one day getting their own farm.
Of Mice and Men